it becomes a little difficult. It becomes a little difficult for us to kind of coordinate that. We would try to answer as much questions as possible. So please place all your questions for the speaker in the Q&A window alone, please. Thank you. And over to you, Mr. Ramakant.
Good evening, Isaka, Bangalore, and all the participants. Thanks for your time today. And I understand it is on a Saturday evening, but due to lockdown, all of us at home. Good to learn and good to share. Thanks to Isaka for giving me this opportunity to share my experience on data privacy. So as we understand, this is a very hot topic, and I would like to just talk on privacy and technology with reference to security and regulations and many more. So during the sessions, I have broken into 3 different sections. So what will happen? We'll ensure that we take a break and take 2-3 questions and then move on. And I have also planned for good amount of time for the question answer sessions as well. So let's understand. All of us are talking about data. So it is no more any kind of buzzword, or it is no more a stranger, right? So now data is the pollution problem of information age, because we are generating data and information every day, and tons and millions of records and data elements. And protecting privacy is environmental challenge, because while you process the data, there are personal data that is being processed as well, and which is connected to the data privacy. And it becomes an environmental challenge because we do not have adequate controls in place. So let's begin. So the agenda for today, I will give a context on market analytics, global trend on privacy, and also technologies. Then we'll little bit touch upon data classifications, privacy principles, and data lifecycle, which will be the basis and baseline for our understanding throughout the course today. I will definitely try to do justice to link privacy and technology view. And we have 2 use cases. And if we have a time, then we'll do the second one. Else we'll continue with the first one, and also focus on audit and certifications, which also is a demand, and little bit touch upon Indian data privacy bill. With that, I will just move on. As we understand that the oil is earlier the key indicator for stock prices. It was like gold coin. And then oil fields were right. The oil fields in the countries are just like minting money. They were the richest economy. And similarly, right now, what is happening here is that we can compare oil field to the internet, because oil we are managing to compare it with the data. So data is in internet. Similarly, oil was in oil fields. So what happens here? So when the raw oil is being generated or extracted, then there are refineries which will ensure that they do the processing, and then they start giving different type of components or kind of useful products which we can use. Similarly, if you look at that, right now, the artificial intelligence and machine learning are the technologies which are ensuring that a lot of different kind of activities are happening to gain the mileage on data, do the commercialization of the data, and also take that as a business line. While you do all that, so we can never forget the fundamental rights of the human rights, and talking about privacy. Hence, we have to ensure that the privacy enhancing technologies bring the new filters and controls to give the results of that is required out of the data mining and data economics. So with that, we'll move on. This is the fundamental definition, which all of us know, but I would like to repeat here. So privacy is about providing a living individual. We are always talking about living individual. We are not talking on the deceased persons. The ability to decide or control, very important on the underlined words, on what information about him or her is collected, how it is used, with whom it is disclosed, and how it is protected. So if you look at all the underlying wordings or elements, that tells us that the user has the right to disclose what type of information that is supposed to be disclosed, and with whom, and how much, and has every right to know how its data is protected. Like we have security risk assessment, similarly, privacy also goes under the risk assessment. So privacy risk is nothing but defined as or measured by the degree of harm caused due to privacy violations. So the degree of harm may be caused due to financial loss, or it can be due to the physical loss, or it can be mental trauma. So it can be categorized in many things. So we'll see that when you talk on the data classification. So now coming here, nowadays a lot of research, R&D and analytics are happening. So here is the research firm which has done some research and some survey on a couple of different sampling. So if you look at the left-hand side, we see here that they have looked at many kind of requirements of human according to Maslow's law. But there you look at, there is hunger, there is a poverty, there is a job creation, education, and everything. And they could rate 65% of the sampling or samples have ticked for privacy of data. That means privacy is gaining a prominence in the consumer's mindset. Similarly, if you look at the right-hand side chart, it talks about that 70%, 74% of the Americans believe that they need control on personal information. It is very key to them. So the message here is that there is a growing consumer awareness in privacy and expectation to protect personal data. So which was there earlier, but it is increasing in a rapid space. So what does it mean to us is that the companies which are processing the personal data of the data subjects, we'll see that, are getting to know and getting to implement the controls to protect data, plus empower customers or employees to set their own privacy preferences, which is nothing but data subject rights. So next, move on. So here is the technology impact. So always we had, most of the participants in this call may agree that privacy is a regulation, it is a law, it is something which is specified that you have to do this, that, and all. But nevertheless, yes, it is a regulation because it is touching the human rights and human expectations. But however, it is no more an silos or no more an orphan without technological connections. So hence, if you look at that, in order to process the personal data, on the right-hand side chart, we see that artificial intelligence is taking the prominence among different kind of data sets or different kind of technologies. Now, while they do that, there are different kind of advanced authentication technologies that are being adopted, including biometrics, software token, and MFAs. All of us know that, but it is getting more and more prominence at all sectors. And the advanced technologies are also in being that we'll see. So the message is the traditional processes are focused on regulatory risk and compliances. But right now, the ethical data programs are there to minimize the risk and support the digital strategy with the data optimization. So that means we can no longer ignore the privacy aspect and ethical aspect of the personal data. So that is the message. Now moving to the evaluation. So many people, they ask, what is privacy? Was it there earlier? Why you are so much worried about it? But if you look at this chart, this is in 1890, we had the right to be left alone, which you might be listening to the buzzword everywhere, right to be forgotten, and all are synonymous in their context. But however, if you look, there is a trajectory as the humans got developed and we became the human being from our ancestors. Similarly, the data privacy also has taken a leap and it has moved down. And 2018 was the day where one of the comprehensive data regulations called GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, was enacted, which is referred as one of the gold standards across the globe. So there is an evolution in privacy. So the message is, it is not that privacy is now, it was there earlier, it will be there and is continue to be there along with us. So moving to the next one. So if you look at this chart, it is something reflection on the global map. So in the global map, I have just put down different privacy rules, privacy regulations which have been enacted, or in India, it is coming as a bill right now. So if you look at that, there are more than 194 countries, and as of February, 128 countries had their own regulations, privacy regulations, which got enforced. And if you look at that, The red depicts the heavy, that means it is stricter, orange robust, and based on the enforcement rules. So fundamentally, let's ask ourselves, we are working in enterprise, and an enterprise is multinational. They have to operate in multiple countries. But how do they cater to so many regulations? What does it mean? How they will cater? What are the controls they will duplicate? So it is mind-boggling. So in order to that, so there are simple best practices that has been there. So there is nothing to be worried. What do we have to do? We have to design and deploy the highest level of privacy and technology controls with the provision to configure at local privacy requirement. For example, what we'll see in the next couple of sessions is that their data privacy principles are foundation stones for all different regulations. But however, some of the local regulations are country specific, culture specific, beliefs, philosophies, and ideas. Based on that, contextually, some of the local requirements might vary in minor percentages. So if we design and deploy the highest level of privacy and technology controls in our processes, in our technology, and in our processing, then 80% is taken care, and only 20% we have to do a local adoption or local tailoring. For example, data localization is enforced in Russia. So that doesn't mean that data cannot come out of Russia. So what they do, they tell that the first copy of the personal data collected has to be stored in Russia in a server which can have access to the authorities at time of need during the national emergencies or terrorist act or investigations. So that is called data localizations. So similarly, some of the countries, they might define their own data classifications. They might add two or more data elements into their list of sensitive, critical, all that. So this is the message. So now let's understand what are the common factors among all the data privacy regulation that we saw. So left-hand side, I'm not going to read line by line, but this is a snapshot of the data finding data principles. And the left-hand side is marked in the blue, starting from data collection till data protection authorities. So similarly, this blue color is never going to change in any regulation that you go. But however, there are some contextual changes that will happen, which is marked in the dark black here, the like breach reporting and till personal data classification, which might have some local tailoring. For example, breach reporting in according to GDPR might be 72 hours. But same thing in Indian data privacy bill, it is not mentioned as a number of hours, it is mentioned as soon as possible or at the earliest. Similarly, some of the HIPAA regulatory requirements in US, they have different timelines to SLA. So the message here is the breach reporting will happen anyway. It comes under accountability. But however, it also tells that different countries have, based on their needs, based on their ideas, their philosophy, their culture, their systems, they have tailored that. So that doesn't mean breach reporting is not there in any other thing. Similarly, we'll take on surveillance and monitoring. Suppose many places the surveillance and monitoring is very strict, and it is some kind of no compromise, like in China or some other countries. So what does it mean? Surveillance and monitoring also exist in US. It also exists in India. It also exists in Europe. But however, the way they treat the outcome of the surveillance and monitoring, the way they conduct, the way they inform the people, that has some changes. So this is just wanted to give a view that the data privacy regulations across the globe will exist. Every country will have their own kind of data privacy regulations. Like US, every state is enacting one law. Similarly, the foundations will never change, and contextualization will happen, it will exist. So we have to adapt accordingly based on our efficiency and effectiveness. Now, moving to the next one. So I will take one pause here, maybe for a minute. Anyone, any questions here?
Yes, sir. I think we have got questions pouring in actually. So maybe if you want, we can take up a couple of questions, and
Yes.
then maybe we can take it up on. So there are a couple of questions around the India privacy data protection bill. So question from Marutish, is the PDPB bill got passed and whether it is effective in India? That's a question now.
Yeah, can I park this question to the end, because I have a slide on things I will explain at that time. It is not yet passed. It is still under review by joint parliamentary countries and the industry body.
Mhm.
That is the answer, but further questions you can discuss. There
Yeah,
is a
sure. The next question is from Subraidu. The question is on the slide of global privacy map, what is the data source you used?
data source used means it is from the map is from DLA Piper. Okay, so you are talking about DLA Piper gave the map, but
Okay.
there are some customization that happen on the different LGPD, Brazil, LDP, all that. That is something that I read and I researched and I put that there.
Okay, thank you, sir. So I think we have answered a few questions. Maybe we can move on if you feel okay.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
now let's move on to the data classification, stakeholder principles and data lifecycle. This is very, very important to understand. This will set the foundation for our future discussions. But just to set the context, many of you know all this and you might be more knowledgeable in this space. But I am just ensuring that everyone understands the baseline context and the basics. So now we have an thing that what is personal data, right? And why does it become very important? And people talk about PII, SPI, and so many things. So now just a simple discussion here. Personal data is defined as any data element, single or in combination, which can identify living individual directly or indirectly. For example, if my name as Ramakant is published somewhere in Isaka, somewhere in your dashboard, no one will be able to understand who is this guy who has come. But if with my full name along with my photograph is tagged, maybe some of people who has worked with me, where my colleagues, where my friends, or we have connected, might identify. But if someone tells that Ramakant Mahapatra with photograph with Infosys Limited, then many people will do. So the identification limits and the scope increases. That is one. So similarly, we have different data categories. We have personal identities, different personal identity numbers, your PAN number, your Aadhaar number, your driving license, many more, your passport, etc. Now, educational informations, your employment, your financial details, family details, your device IDs. So these are some of the categories of personal data which are subject to the personal data regulations. So now there are some questions which we are asking in earlier sessions, that location data, device ID, cookie IDs, IP address, RFID tags, they were not earlier covered under the regulations. But now, based on the digital world that is going on, so these has been added because easily with one of them, someone can track and tag them and map them to the individual ID. For example, in my at my home, I have an Wi-Fi router which is mapped to my name and it is from the Airtel. So at any point of time, Airtel with that particular device ID can identify in the event of any kind of emergencies to tag that it is belongs to Ramakant, and then enforcement departments can take actions accordingly. So that is why it is becoming. And wherever we have static IPs, it is very, very easy to map. Okay, so that is why it has been included, because it sees that it has a high risk of mapping the individual and taking the actions. Similarly, the sensitive data is listed down here. And in India, so there is financial data has been added as one of the critical data elements. So what does it mean for sensitive data and why it is different? Just I'll give an example. Suppose I belong to some political party. I don't belong to, but I have an affiliation, suppose. And then some of the opposition party, they know that Ramakant has an affiliation to XYG party. So post-election, if the opposition party doesn't win, then, and they found out that I have influenced some of the votes, then they might cause some problems to me, my family, physical harm, mental harm, kidnapping, XYG. So hence, the degree of harm that is caused because of this data and which is known and direct impact on me is more harm, more severe than if someone knows only my name. So that is why it is more sensitive and special categories. Okay, so degree of harm is the key here. Now we'll move to the next one. So these are the stakeholders which in the data privacy context. So all of us may know this. So data controller is the entity which determines the means and purpose of the processing of personal data. Who process our personal data? They're accountable for our personal data. They're the data custodian of our personal data once you give them. Then data processor is nothing but who process on behalf of data controller. Means the customers that we serve in our enterprises are data controllers, whereas we are data processors. But however, there are different fundamentals will come a joint controller. Then data processor also we'll have something called sub-processing, which we can also give to another party, right? So that becomes that link. Now, who is data subject? Data subject is the entity about which the data is being talked about, personal data is being processed, being talked about. That means all of us. It may be employees, it may be any stakeholders in our company, maybe customer, customer's customer, and XYZ. So, and who is DPA? Data Protection Authorities. They are the enforcement agencies who are statutorily responsible to uphold the data privacy enactment or the law in the country. They will enforce the penalties, they will enforce the provisions, the applicability, the implementability. So they are the bodies who will do that. So while we discuss on all this, in Indian context, data controller is known as data fiduciary and data subject is known as data principal. So these are the two nomenclatures which are a little different than what we are discussing. So now moving to the next one is this is the building block of our principles. So many of the regulations or many of the different readings that you do, you may get in different terminology and you might think that it is a little bit exchanged, but it is made simple here. So these are some of the things that is there. Others will be corollaries from there, of course. So data collection, we have to ensure that it is collected fairly according to the law. We are not collecting more. We are not collecting forcefully, and we have to use data minimization principle. What does it mean? That we have to minimize only that data that is required, not more. Then we have to use those data for a particular purpose, which is specific, which is explicit, and also which is very, very legitimate. That means it's legally permissible. So you cannot collect some data for some of the unseen, like doing an kind of crime. You cannot collect the data for a crime, performing a crime. It is not allowed as per the law. Similarly, these purposes, you cannot collect data for one purpose and again use that for other purpose unless it is compatible and you have notified in from the data subject from where you collected the data. So moving to the next one, this is very, very prominent and it is getting very, very, very high visibility and also enforcement is the data subject rights, means our rights. That means if we are given some data to processor, data controller to process, and we should know, and we should have access to our data, we should know what is happening, where it is stored, who has access, every right we have. So, but it differs from employee to employer scenarios and differs from the social media processing, it differs from the e-commerce and industry. So there are context changes, but this is applicable. Maybe a little bit in different way, you can in some way correlate this to right to information in some part of this. Now, moving to the next one, transparency. What does it mean? That means whenever anyone is taking our data or processing our data, they are supposed to give us all the details about the data. That means from collecting till processing and till deletion, what they are doing with our data, they are supposed to inform us. Changes to that also, they are reportedly they have to tell us. So that is a transparency. So that is the data accuracy. So what does it mean by data accuracy? Why it is very important? That means you have given some data 3 years back. After that, again, there are some changes to you, you have not updated. Or there are some changes to the policies, or there's changes to the way it will be processed. No one has informed you. That means the processing is wrong. You have different view, your expectation is different. For example, suppose you have a newborn in your family and you are not updating your insurance or you are not updating your organizational insurance company's portal telling that I have a newborn. But suddenly you have some case and you have to avail the insurance. What will happen there? So it is not there, right? So there might be complications, litigations and all that. So that is why data in the system has to be accurate at all times. Okay, now coming to this is what one of the good thing that we have a slide on this. So now let's understand that everything under the earth has to be secured, and without security safeguards and controls, none of the data, either it is personal data or not personal data, it cannot be secured. So the logic is security has to be taken care in transit, in rest, in circulation, and in sharing everywhere. So that is the degree of controls has to be there. Based on the risk assessment, we have to deploy the appropriate controls. Now, next one is storage limitations. Very, very important, because right now, if you look, this is very, very kind of particular expectation from even from data subjects and with the organizations, how they will delete the to so many years old data. What is the process? So here, what does it mean that if you don't need any data for further processing, why do you have in your data? So the question is, there might be a requirement by the law, there might be a requirement for processing, there might be a requirement for reporting. So if those are the cases or scenarios, then we can do. Else, there is no point that you can secure the data. For example, I am working in an organization, I left the organization and I moved to another one. The company can keep some of my data for processing or reporting to income tax or to company secretaries or whatever, right? Up to some levels, but they need not keep all my data that is there from beginning. There are many data that can be deleted and wiped off, which is no longer required. Of course, data transfer across the borders, data transfer between the companies, data transfer between the industry and different entities is very, very important. And in order to ensure that all these principles are upheld, they are all abided, they're all done. So we have something called accountability. So who is the accountable for ensuring all this happens? So that is nothing but our data controller. So if you look at that, what we are trying to get there is, we are trying to understand that privacy principles are common across privacy legislation across the globe, and these are the fundamental building blocks. So now moving to the next one. So this analogy I just want to give. Everyone think that security is different, privacy is different, who is big, who is small, who has more control, but I want to make it simple. Let a water tap. So I have some unprotected personal data that is coming, and I want it to be secured. What will happen? So someone will prepare the required security controls. What does it mean? Like in banking environment, when you are doing a banking transaction, you are giving an user ID and password, and then bank will process your data to process. So what does it give? It gives an MFA. MFA he gives where? It gives in your cell phone, which is registered. So that means that code you will give. So it is authenticating. It is Ramakant who has logged in. His mobile number is untouched. So I have done 2 levels of authentication. So now it will give the secured personal data. So that means the personal data that is coming and going through, it is secured through security controls. Now let's take another simple analogy. This is a window, grills are there, door is there, and we have curtains. So what does they mean? The grills, they tell that security, and curtains they tell about privacy. How does it work? The curtains, you can just ensure that you can take it and make it minimize or maximize. We can widen the gap. That means the data subjects have the control to show or disclose as much data they want. If they don't want to disclose any data, they can pull everything, but not in all scenarios, but most of the scenarios. So mainly in the social sites that which we have control. May not be, we don't have that much control in employment scenarios, but yes, in case of these scenarios. Now, based on the 2 analogy, what does it mean for us? Let's understand. Privacy defines what personal data based on degree of sensitivity. We talked about degree of harm. So it is degree of sensitivity in causing harm to be secured. So what does security tells? Security tells that security controls protect the required personal data in balanced and appropriate manner. That means there may be some controls which are adequate. Maybe some of the cases single authorization is fine. Some cases multi-factor authentication is required. So that is what will be determined based on the degree of harm and sensitivity. So now moving to the next one, we will understand this one, very, very important. So I want to make it simple. So all of us understand data life cycle. We understand that there is something called collection process and something called deletion at the end. I have added output and uploads and downloads into that. Now let's understand, while you do the collection, we can have collection through online mode. We may have a hard copy in banks or some of the places. We may collect over phone, third party, public and government sources. Then we can transfer outward, inward or X border. All the transfer of data is possible. Then we can have operations on data. Someone can view, retrieve and view on the screen. Someone can edit and validate. Someone can copy the data. Someone can query and insert in database. Someone can save. Those operations can happen. There are many more operations that are also there. Now coming to storage, we can have a primary storage. We need to have backup storage because of the availability. Then we know where storage location is happening, which country, which continent. Then what is the model? On-prem, hybrid cloud, private cloud, public cloud, XIG, okay, virtual environments, many things. So now coming here, when you are storing, so there is a requirement now. We have to retain for some time because storage is costly. So we should not keep on data for 100 years. We should store, release the space, make it economic of scale, and make it also logical. So we will have period, retention period. Who defines? Either to regulations or the data controller based on the need. For what purpose we have to delete? We have to keep or delete. What is the legal requirement tells? What are the type of data that can be deleted or retained? For example, some of the trend we have to keep, some of the data we have to keep for doing a trend analysis to take some decision on the performance aspect in the company, or some kind of details you have to tell that we are high performers. Maybe what we can do, we do not have to keep the employee name, employee number tag. We can de-identify them, and then we can anonymize the data and do an research, do an modeling, try to find out what measures we can take, for example. Then output from the system can be reports, which can be downloaded from a system. There can be messages and alerts in the banking systems or in your transactions, different transactions. We can have calls, the output calls which can go. We can have emails. So do the content in this has to be secured? If you ask that answer, yes, because there may contain personal data which have to be secured while in transit, while in transfer, or while in sharing, in circulation. Now, next, uploads and downloads. Similar, we can have input files which comes from different sources, APIs. We do not know, we have not collected, but we have to upload. They may count personal data. So then file output, we give some file to some bank for processing, which might have personal data. So is it encrypted? Should it be the whole file has to be encrypted, or we have to have a secure server in transfer? Reports and data and others. So if you look at all this, so these are different operations, and hence data privacy is applicable everywhere. So if you look at the data privacy principles, so if you look at reflect your mind, then you can see that everywhere. So I want to give another thought to all of you. So what is that thought? Let's understand our data. Okay, so data is there in transit, transfer, REST, UI display. Data can be there in processing and operations. In web logs, our infra logs, network logs, access logs, delete logs. We can have real-time database. Data will be there. We'll have backup and archival data. We can have storage, cloud, on-premise, country or location is important. We can have sharing, email, share drive, other medium. Data can be there in different channels, SMS, alerts, and IVRs. Data can be available in interim storage, test environment, data lake. We can have data third-party access to our database, or we are accessing their database. So there is exchange of data through APIs. Data can be there in hard copy and print medium. We should never neglect them. They are also, their personal data might be there. Suppose your offer letter with financial or salary details lying somewhere on the desk, that is subject to data privacy. Okay, so now coming to the report upload to storage in cloud or on premise. You can upload, people can view, they can have to. Then of course downloads. So if you look at that, if someone really look at these particular activities, that means data is everywhere. That means the philosophy is data has to be secured, protected at each stage of data lifecycle through privacy engineering, which privacy by design. So we'll touch upon privacy by design with a small view, but this is the message here. That means you cannot neglect that you have to do only data privacy in collection, and I don't care when it is there in uploads or downloads or output. No, that is not something. In data privacy, either compliance is 1 or 0. There is nothing called in between. Okay, so now I'll take a pause here and open for a few questions.
Yes, sir. We can have a few questions now. There are a lot of questions coming up from the audience. I have a first question, right? So collection of data is always a kind of a challenge. When I look back like 5 years back or 10 years back, when we have this IT or application development teams or the software teams, we have a role called business analyst who kind of gather input from the customers and try to say that this is what we want to build an IT application. So by kind of virtue of the process, we try to ensure that we collect all the data fields, and we capture all data fields and design the application. Whether the business is going to use those specific fields or not, we collect all the fields and put it in the application. And some of the fields will go from a upstream application to a downstream application and gets processed in the enterprise, right? So in the current scenario, how do you think that we should provide awareness so that we collect the required information? Because of the data lifecycle and the controls, the key part is what to collect and what to not to collect, right? So that is a big challenge. So how do you address this challenge of collecting the right set of data, not more or not less? How do you do that?
Okay, so I'll break this question in two parts. One is data collection, one is the purpose limitations. Both are important. So what happens whenever the business analyst, they collect a lot of data elements in the design, there is a specific purpose or process that is attached to that. That means the data is being collected to process some kind of operations or business logic in order to give some output. So that flow will be clear, right? So for example, while doing a bank transaction, okay, we need to ensure that there are a few fields that are there, but that is collected. But what happens in the bank when you go, they give a list of all fields. You give everything that is under the earth, so that they keep that for their future purposes, which beat the purpose, because the purpose limitation tells that you have to collect data for a particular purpose. But however, it is also humanly not possible for the business to tag everything at once. So hence, what we can do, we can have multiple purposes if it is applicable in that particular process or the system flow, and have a comprehensive data element list, and which can also tag to the purposes or compatible purposes. For example, you are collecting PAN number. PAN number can be given for processing income tax. PAN number can be given to collect the Provident Fund, and they collect to the Department of Provident Fund. Both are different entities, but however, it is a single PAN number which will be there. So hence, when the departments, they collect PAN number, they can very well mention that PAN number will collect for 1, 2, 3, 4 purposes. So that is something. Okay, so that means it can be used with the compatible purposes, with a purpose in hand, which is marked and specific.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we have to define the purpose, what we are collecting.
Yes.
And
yes.
again, if the same data field is used for different purposes, that also has to be highlighted, maybe from a form of a centralized data dictionary kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Data inventory.
Data inventory. Okay. So another couple of questions. So one question is from Mr. Mohan Naik. The question is, not all cookies collect privacy data. Then why cookie tracking is considered in privacy? This is regarding the cookies.
Yeah. So these cookies, no, yes, you are right that all cookies do not collect the privacy data, right? But in event of that proving that they are not collecting, correct? So they have to prove that they are not collecting. That is first one. So if they cannot collect, as by design of the cookies, the way it is done, there are different system data that is collected. So I am not sure, some research has to be done, or there might be some insight to this, but in principle, the cookie IDs have different kind of parameters, and which can be linked at any point of time to the device ID, and which can be there to the user who is logging in, or whatever the profiles are available.
Okay.
Right. So the guys who tell that all cookies do not collect, they have to prove. That means those entities or those kind of technology has to prove that cookie doesn't collect any personal data. If they do that, then in their own privacy notice, or the consent they run on their websites when the cookies are corrected, they can very well tell that we do not collect this data. Hence, the cookie is something that will not do that. So that is something that needs to be elaborated and done an assessment before we make this comment.
Okay. So again, there is a related question there down also in the cookies, right? One of the field the cookies also we see is IP addresses, right? Like a static or a dynamic IP addresses. This is a question from Pratik. Like, can this dynamic IP addresses can be considered as a personal data or not?
Yeah. See, dynamic and static IPs are subject to getting the identified. Okay. That means whenever that suppose at any point of time, somebody is capturing the system, right? And at that time there is a dynamic ID. Of course, in our technologies, dynamic ID can be retrieved that it was mapped to to whom at what point of time. So that technology available.
Mhm.
So if it can be gathered, retrieved, the dynamic IPs are related to some individual like my name or someone, then we can definitely have that covered under data privacy. But however, if there's a chance that dynamic IP is not able to map, and there are technologies which are not taking and mapping them, then those technologies has to be seen, and maybe they will not be subject to data privacy.
Okay, cool. So there is one more question around cloud. Maybe can we take it up now? One last question before we move to the next
Yeah.
section. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a question from Mariamal Ponnagan. So the question is, when the data is stored in the cloud, most of the time we see that the cloud service provider agreements say that they cannot confirm for a definite where the data is getting backed up. So how do we know which regulations are getting affected or violated? Is there is something cloud providers should clearly mention in the agreements? So it's more to do with the cloud agreements on the data storage and backup and things like that. Would you like to take that question, sir?
Yes. So very good question. So the logic is here is that nowadays all the data service providers who are providing the cloud services, they are very much aware that they are signing up for an SLA of uptime, which is called availability, right? 99.95, 99.99. So based on that clause, they are supposed to have their reflections of BCP-DR center. So it is nothing but they have BCP-DR center where they're supposed to provide the data availability. So in the event of when we are talking about the backup mechanism, so there are different ways we have to look at. So whenever we are telling who is the owning the data backup in cloud services, in some cases, the controller tells that I will enforce the data backup in my thing because there is some sensitive data I don't want to be done in your premises or in your server or in your platform. Number one. Number two, sometimes the guys, they ask for additional charge. Okay, that if I take the backup and on so many days, so many terabytes, then you are subject to additional economy or additional effort and cost. That is second one. But however, that they will not take the backup of the data, that is something that has worked out is on a contractual level. It is not a business decisions. If they don't agree that we will not sign up, that is the business decision, nothing to do with the regulations. Because if you look at that, according to regulation, the CIA tried whatever the resilience or the availability that has to be enforced by the services. SLA uptime is guaranteed. So under that circumstance, they are supposed to provide that service and ensure that that is happening.
Yeah, so I think the collective point is also like when we go to some of the cloud providers, like depending upon the nature of business, some of the cloud vendors clearly give you an impression that where the data is being stored, primary data, and where the backup data is being stored. In some of the agreements, the backup location is not clearly mentioned. So I think the question was coming up for more from the angle, maybe if we are storing any personal
Yes.
identifiable information or a sensitive data, we should ask the clarification from the cloud vendor and then move on with the request, right? That is what you're trying to suggest, right?
Yes, and we have to ensure that we execute the contract according that they are supposed to tell the backup locations. But
Mhm.
however, we
Mhm.
had to be little cautious here because of the what a criminal avoidance. Some
Mhm.
of the even large players, they don't disclose their backup centers in your agreement, but they
Okay.
do give you an option to tell you confidentially and show you that there are backups, but they don't put into the agreement because agreement is in different hands, right?
Mhm.
And it is available for circulation in the company also. So,
Okay.
but most of the cases they do because they are supposed to do. It is not something that they will do outside. It is within the purview of the contract and the execution of the services.
Okay. Thank you, sir. That really answers the question. I think we can move on, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the privacy and technology, how they are linked with each other. So let's understand, this is a graph which talks about, I think, the generation of the our technology. I think those guys who were in era of mainframes, I belongs to that era. So the mainframe, and now we are something where we are going to quantum computing, right? And so many different technologies. So if you look at that graph, that red curve, so that curve tells that how fast we have moved. And if you look at the blue curve, that is something spiral. It comes down and sometimes it's lazy. It goes after some time. So what does it indicate? It indicates that technology has taken a big leap and rapid movement or faster transformation, whereas the regulation has not moved that fast. So what does it mean? Does it signify anything to us? Should we be worried about, or is it something not required? So let's understand. So what happens? The message here is, so the message here is that privacy and legal provisions are independent of technology. So if you look at any kind of technologies and privacy regulations, none of the legal regulations, not privacy, any legal regulation, if you go, unless it is specific to that industry, it doesn't specify what controls you have to do and how much you have to protect and how much you have to do. Because there is a philosophy that always technology enhancing innovations are happening, and innovations will always take a bigger leap and always ahead of the privacy regulations. So hence, none of the regulations that define and they suggest or they what you call prescribe, I can tell prescribe any particular controls. But however, they're applicable even though they are 200 years old. How they're applicable? Because they have their own caveats. They tell that you do a risk assessment based on your degree of risk assessment. You are free to implement adequate, appropriate, sufficient technological controls for managing your risk. That is the bottom line. Suppose you tell that you are going in artificial intelligence. So yes, artificial intelligence may not have direct correlation to any kind of privacy regulations. Now that the guidelines are coming, but however, it may not have. But what does it tell? That whenever you are implementing artificial intelligence, you have to ensure that privacy of the personal data is enforced. So when you tell privacy of personal data is enforced or it is taken care, that means the privacy principles apply. When the privacy principles apply, that means you have to put technological controls to ensure that privacy is taken care. So that is how it is linked. Now moving to the next one. This is a data privacy trends 2021. What does this signify is very, very important. So yes, there are more DP regulations will be enacted. We are seeing every day something is coming. And we are seeing that now customers are more and more demanding for transparency and their own data safety and everything. Now also there is a data cross-border data transfer is moving. It is happening. The boundaryless economy, boundaryless transactions, trade, and all is happening. But there is, in order to have that, there are more and more focus on investment of privacy technologies, because the way the data and information are taking the leap. So unless we invest in more and more privacy technology, we cannot provide the adequate level of privacy controls and safety to the data subjects and to the even to the industries and also to the business and to the overall what you call the enterprise, whatever you call enterprise means it is of the as a control of their own data. So that means there is a focus on investment in privacy technologies, and the trend shows that we have to enforce, we have to implement. It is no more an CIO or CISO problem, it is becoming a board problem now. And because any kind of violations will directly impact the board, the brand image, and also the business of the enterprise. Hence, it is more from that point of view. Now, moving to the future trend, as we talked, there are innovations that are happening. So if you look at that, many of these kind of technologies, Internet of Behaviors, your privacy enhancing computation, and intelligent composable business, all those are different jargons. It has its own kind of advantages, but most of them have impact on the privacy. But however, do we stop innovation because of privacy? Or do we not do things more with less or more efficiently and more automated? Okay, so what does that mean? So let's understand. So business innovation will continue and technology transformation is inevitable. But however, data privacy has to exist along with them as a triad, and hence they all has to coexist. But however, we have to take an cognizance of balanced view and control for coexistence. That's why the privacy risk assessment is important in order to define that how much you have to control. Should we control so that we don't do business? No, that is not something which is being done. So then this is something applicability. Let's understand. So these are some things which are happening very fast. Signature, photos, biometrics, messages, alerts, CCTV, mobile devices, profiling, so many things. So these are some examples, but these are something in the modern things. It is going, which most of them are going towards the business and commercialization. Some things are invasion of the privacy, and many things are happening. So, but all has to coexist. So the message is there is a balanced coexistence required, and it has to be done. Now coming to the privacy technologies, enhancing technologies, which is coming nowadays, and it is there, but it is getting in more and more deep. So earlier we had something called encryption. All of us know. Now they are making it homomorphic encryption. There is something called differential privacy. They are called security multiple computation. Many of you may be knowing this, but I'm just giving zero knowledge proofs. So all these are the concepts which were there earlier, but they were not taking the leap. They are not getting enforced. They are not into visualization. So nowadays, because the risk is increasing in rapid space, because we are open to more and more kind of open source, we are doing more processing, intrusive processing, investments to different kind of data. So we have to secure the data using cryptographic algorithms. Why does it mean? That means it is an analogy of virus and antivirus. So virus companies has to ensure that they have to be in the market. They have to develop more and more virus. In the same way, antivirus has to also be in the market. So they have to counteract virus. So both has to coexist. You cannot say that I have done antivirus 1 and then for lifelong 10 years, I don't have any other tool or any other patch to upgrade. No, that doesn't exist. Similarly, based on the technology is progressing, we are having more and more risk. And those, in order to mitigate the risk, we have to have some technical controls we have to do based on the need. Similarly, earlier top use cases of PET, which I want to highlight. Earlier, test data and DevOps management was not under privacy, but however, it is now, because no more enterprises are looking for synthetic data in some of their kind of POCs and some of other kind of development environment. They want real life because it is in agile mode. They want to implement in next 2 weeks, so they don't have time to do a lot of things in the system testing, then pre-system testing, UAT environment, dev environment, many things from production, right? So that is, and in healthcare and financial institutions, it is becoming more and more in addition to their data transfer. So this is something just to give a view that those who are in this field, you are in good shape. So you have to just take this leap and move on. So moving on to the next one. So next one is something we have to understand what is all about. Why we talk about so much about privacy enhancing technologies? Are there something different? Are there something which is not there earlier? Do they don't exist now? Are they not managed by security groups? So yes, everything is yes. So now left-hand side is known as privacy requirement and expectations that we have seen. These are the founding blocks. Now coming here, in order to enhance that we satisfy these requirements, it has to be done through technological controls. So when you have to do the technological controls, in addition to organization controls, which I'll explain one or two later point of time. But if you look at the transaction type of transactions that we do, someone has to authorize, someone has to do digital surveillance, and some deep packet inspection, data leak prevention, so many things you have to do. So while doing that, should we use some of the mechanism to ensure that privacy is ensured, privacy is taken care? So those are nothing but filtering, encryption, data deletion, all this. And this can only be possible with using tools, platform, and technologies. So this is just a map for an understanding. This is not exhaustive list, but however, it is a map. You have to correlate that how the principles and the technology and transactions are correlated. But how we have to implement this through privacy by design. So let's understand a little bit on privacy by design. So what does it mean? What is this concept privacy by design? It is a no stranger. It was there earlier, but it was not coming to forefront and getting implemented in the way that is being focused now. It is just similar to, guys, secure by design in applications. Few years back, security was in beaten pieces. Now, last few decades, maybe more than 1.5 decades, it has taken a shape. It has taken a security kind of organization, organized, and you can see frameworks, you can see controls, different layers and everything which is coming and getting implemented. It was there earlier, but it was not taking that shape and enforcement. Similarly, this is nothing but it is equivalent of privacy by design to secure by design. So let's understand what does it mean. It may be very simple: proactive, not reactive; preventive, not remedial. What does it mean? So that stitch at time saves 9, the funda. So similarly, what we have to do, we have to be taking care of the privacy design during our initial stage of business requirements and design, so that we need not take care of all this in the event of letter of punishment because of non-compliance. That is very, very thing that we have to proactively take control and involve the privacy requirements and the design, the discussion in early stage of system development. And we'll touch upon what happens with the existing systems. Now coming there, so what does it mean by privacy as default setting? So what does it mean is that the system design should also ensure that there are some places where user cannot take an action, but still privacy has to be taken care. For example, whenever you display data, okay, display data on the screen, so there may be some things called you can put as opt-out, or some things you can put as opt-in. But however, sometimes you display some of the data, right? So whenever you display some data, if it is sensitive, then you can make it as default setting as must. Or some of the places you can make some default setting as not applicable. So that means user is not doing anything, but he's getting the privacy being enforced, and it is taken care of his data. Now moving to the next one, which is privacy embedded into design. As we discussed, we should not tell that the privacy is something called add-on, like a bolt you put in a screw. But whatever we have to do, we have to make privacy as the core functionality. So when you take this as core functionality, we need not struggle in order to find out how to implement. If we do one time right, then automatically it will flow through and it will follow the life cycle. So that is what we have to make it an integral part of the system, but we will not compromise on the functionality. As I mentioned earlier, privacy will be there, but doesn't mean that privacy will inhibit your business or inhibit the functionality. So that is something key. Now let's come to the what is mean by full functionality, from positive sum or zero, not zero sum. So what does it mean? So what we are trying to tell is we have to have a win-win situation. We have to tell full functionality. We will not tell that it is something that takes something and then don't do something. So it has to be win-win situation. So we have to accommodate all legitimate interests and objectives in our design, in our privacy journey. So that means we should never neglect whatever is coming or through a dated or something unnecessary trade-offs. Now, next one is very important. It is on the data security that we talked about. So end-to-end security, full lifecycle encryption. As we discussed, that privacy has to be ensured in throughout the lifecycle of the data lifecycle. And hence, in the lifecycle of the system, anywhere it has to be ensured, either through data collections or till data destruction. Everything has to be secured, and we have to ensure that it is taken care end-to-end. Data at transit, data at rest, data in motion, and data in circulation, data in transfer, whatever form you can talk about. Now, next one is a little transparency. Keep it open. So that means the transparency principle, that you are doing something and you are telling the people that I have to do all this. But however, there is something that has to be also a little bit of secret because of the business, because whatever the data leak prevention algorithms you can deploy, you cannot tell everything to the guys, because there will be some insider threat. They will do an counter algorithm for that, right? So there are some of the business thin line that has to be played. But however, what does that mean? That you have to ensure that you have to create a trust factor, but with the verification. Whom? Because the guys whose personal data you are doing. So that means you have to ensure that you are visible, transparent. They know that what personal data is collected. They know that whether they have signed a consent or not. They should know that if they have an access to their data correction, they can get their data. They can opt for not processing if those operations are optional. But now let's move on a little bit on this. So the last one, which is very, very key, it is respect user privacy. Keep it user-centric. That means we use strong privacy defaults. We have to ensure that we give appropriate notice. We have to take user-friendly options, user-centric. That means suppose a notice we are giving, we cannot give a lengthy notice, which is 2 pages. Make it layered notices. ensure that you have struggled. You struggle to design that, but it is appropriate. Then some notice you have to make it multilingual for different countries. Maybe the notice you cannot show, you can give a link and they can go online and look at that. So different ways you can implement that, so that make it user friendly, user centric, so that it is acceptable. Now I will go to one section, then I'll come back. Let me go to use case first. Then I'll come back to privacy by design. I understand there will be questions. So let's understand a use case. So what we have studied now, we have studied about privacy and technology. We did study about the principles, the trends, and the matching of privacy expectations and requirements. Let's understand this. Very good example, right? A person visit a company in India for business discussions. He will be subject to visitor management system of the company. What are the privacy issues and how this has to be handled? Let's understand that. So what we'll do, let's go here. This is some life cycle I have taken, may not be exhaustive, but I have taken here. Let's understand visitor checked in. He goes to the reception and he's giving his details. So then there might be implementation challenges, or there might be different ways different companies will implement. So I have taken is that as digital, not about the paper copy, right? So digital, not manual. So the visitor management system, when he goes and tells the name, probably earlier there is a notice that already Ramakant's visitor is coming. So I am the host. So I get a notification that your visitor is already available, right? So then what will happen? The visitor, since he is already registered earlier by someone, okay, or it is online registration there itself. So the visitor tells that name, I want to meet Ramakant. So the visitor name, they find whether Ramakant exists in the system, they validate, they send me an SMS notification, and maybe there is a provision that earlier the name of the visitor must have been with the reception of the visitor management system, pre-booking we call, right? It is there. So based on those kind of validations, then visitor management system prints a level for that visitor, that is known as visitor pass, which may be temporarily based on the date, time, whatever. So while they do the visitor pass, they might take a photograph there, they might paste there, or sometimes some of the company, they will not take the photograph. So there will be a level that will come. Then we have to have a barcode scanner, which will show there, so that whenever it is required, we can map them to visitor. Then we ask the visitor to give some details. Okay, so what the detail that give your name, give your what you call the device IDs, give your laptop ID, tell your phone number, can you give your business card? So we'll see that next, but we ask a lot of data. Okay, then we also ask him to take a signature. Sometimes we will ask him to give your fingerprints. Sometimes you will tell that I want to have your photograph. You will please take a photo in the camera. So all that we do. Then of course, whenever you do all this, there are maybe some of the things we fill in manual, so that can be OCR converted. So it is available in the overall system, it is available. Then the visitor takes that pass, he goes into the system. Either the host comes and text along, or he goes, because he might be a frequent visitor, he knows, he goes to that particular department or particular block where he is entitled as per the visitor requirement. So now in this whole story, then he goes to the department, he had a meeting, and then he records using his phone, he records, and using his laptop, he connects to the Wi-Fi and access the internet, and then he takes some printouts. Then meeting is over, he walks away, either he dusted the printout or he takes along with him, and all that happens. Okay, so during this, just there are a few things that will remain. So he is having access to Wi-Fi, and he's having access to the labs. You will have access to, maybe have access to different sources and all that. So in all this, we always expect visitors are good. They're trustworthy, they're ethical, and they can be trusted. But however, there might be some guys who has come to understand and collect some data about the company to play foul, right? So in addition to this, there is a privacy that is required. What is the privacy requirement? That means we are collecting a lot of personal data about this visitor, because we have a visitor management system. We have satisfied the requirements, number one. Number two, there is a factor that post the visit, what will happen to the visitor data that is collected. Third one, are we intimating the visitor that these are the data we are collecting, and we will be storing, we'll be doing. So these are some of the nuances that has to be going to designing the visitor management system. There are a lot of visitor management systems available in the market of the self tools. Okay. And then there is something that where the data is stored. Okay. That is whether it is cloud or I have subscribed to some visitor management system who is giving SaaS systems, SaaS-based visitor management system as well. And then the next question we have to ask ourselves is telling that if I have a visitor management system in France or in Germany, but I am a corporate in India, should I not know about the data, how many are coming through online, so that I can monitor, I can ask? So then it is again cross-border data transfer of the personal data. So have we collected all this in our contract? Have we